Hey, it's Mets Wrap 360. Spoiler alert, player of the week, Curtis Granderson. Mets Wrap 360 starts now.
You're tuning into the destination for TV superfan discussion, AFTERBUZZ TV. And now, let the buzz begin.
Oh, that's right. Come on.
We're going to sing. Sprinkle it with dew. Oh, there we have the word.
Cover it with chocolate and a miracle or two or three. The Grandy Man can. The Grandy Man can. That's right, the Grandy Man can. Usually not a big proponent of nicknames created by New York Yankees radio broadcaster John Sterling, but the Grandy Man, you can't not love the Grandy Man. So, of course, late last night, when the Mets had a walk-off 12th inning win, I completely scrapped the rundown I wrote for the show, and I'm like, nope. We need the Grandy Man because he mixes it with love and makes the world taste good. Welcome to Mets Wrap 360. I'm Christian Bladt at Christian DMZ. To my left, the other side of the desk, Andrea Fasano at Andy Fasano.
That was a nice little change-up.
Yeah, you know, I mean, look, I love Meet the Mets.
Still as bubbly and fun.
I love Disco Meet the Mets that we rolled out last week. We'll probably hear it next week. But I was just like, great to, have a little Grandy Man.
I liked it.
And Melissa can't be here because she used this show as a tool to surprise her mom for a surprise birthday trip.
How sweet.
Her mom was exasperated that I was in on it. But happy birthday, Mama Llama.
Aww. Anyway.
This is actually, I've seen Andrea more recently than last Sunday's show. Andrea came by the Tomorrow Show, which I do with our fearless leader, Kevin Undergaro. If you are interested in the show, go to thetomorrowshow.com. There's a couple of photos that we'll sprinkle in out there for the viewers on YouTube. And while those are getting loaded up, I should always point out, follow us on Twitter at ABTV Mets, and rate, comment, all that good stuff on iTunes. That'll always help because that way you can find our Mets podcast over all the others.
And YouTube.
And YouTube, yeah, definitely. So we have a great photo, myself and Andrea, and then that's Stephen Helmkamp, whom I do Trump versus Hillary, Tuesdays, 7 Pacific on AfterBuzz, where we cover the election. And two of the three AfterBuzzers that we had on the show were handpicked by me. So I have a real eye for talent. That's a great one because you get to show off the boots.
I love that.
Love those Star Trek boots.
And I have to say, I was going to say, you clearly do pick the best people to be your co-hosts for shows.
Absolutely.
Because, I mean, obviously.
Obviously.
Obviously. And Steven's awesome. I got to meet him the first time that night. Really quality human being.
Yeah, and, Kevin he did what he calls his Hollywood
career coach.
And he gave you a little bit of advice.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
It was great. It was great to have you there. It seemed like a lot of fun. There was one moment though that made me a little worried. And, Zach, you let me know when we can play it.
No.
I just wasn't sure. There's one thing where I was just like in the booth and I was like, wait, really? So
I'm a little nervous.
You should be a little nervous.
I didn't even watch this back yet.
Yeah, I think the sports thing has always
right
just been there, and even with AfterBuzz getting involved now with boxing with Jared and doing the Mets 360 show with Christian.
No idea who you do the Mets show with. Literally no idea. I know that was a split second. Thank you, Zach. We don't need it. No, it was a split second, but in the booth, it felt like an eternity. It's like, oh yeah, the boxing show with Jared, which you haven't done in like a month, and then you're like, and the Mets show with oh God, what's that guy's name?
What is his name?
Melissa's there, obviously.
He's really fun. He sits at the other end of the table.
Yeah. So I took that a little personally, but that's all right. Thank you for pulling 8 seconds of video, Zach. I really appreciate it.
Zach, thanks for that, buddy, because you were also there that night. I have to tell you 2 things. One, I understand how that appears, right? Because in the moment even, your name was coming up, but I think I was jumping ahead to past what I was going to say.
Right. And my name just wasn't important. It's okay.
Hilarious that I was getting there and they just jumped all over me. I mean, clearly I didn't even have a second.
I know.
But the funnier part is that in that after second, I go, Christian's gonna die. That I just so
you actually realized it.
It seems like I forgot your name, but I was really just processing what else I was going to say, and I was like, oh my god, he thinks that I like Jared better. Like, that's what you definitely
now,
thought.
I didn't think that until you just said it, because it's not possible for anyone to like Jared better.
Aw.
Which, by the way, if you're a boxing fan, Jared Gilkerson, I'll give a plug.
Yep.
An hour before our show, 4:10 Pacific time, he does the AfterBuzz boxing show. I was in the chat room over there kind of making a ruckus. I wanted to see if he wanted to talk about the Clubber Lang Apollo Creed fight from Rocky 3. He did not. But we did talk a little Ivan Drago from Rocky 4. Anyway, all that stuff was aside, but it was great to have you up there. It seems like you got some great advice. And if anybody wants to...
That is hilarious. And you're both great. And I'm glad that both of you were there. So
yeah, if anybody wants to watch a fun, different kind of show, you can go to thetomorrowshow.com. It's also on iTunes, and we have a lot of fun up there. But what was also fun this week... The New York Mets.
Yes.
We're going to talk about the week in a second. There was some bad news, though. Jacob deGrom was supposed to start today. We're very excited to have him back. But he got scratched, and he's going to miss the rest of the season. Probably going to have nerve surgery in his right elbow. So that doesn't sound good, considering that he's already had Tommy John surgery under his belt. Not literally under his belt, because that's not where you get Tommy John surgery. So that's a bit of a setback, but at the same time, it's, you know, there have been so many setbacks that it's almost like you just go like,
what's one more?
Yeah, you know, what next?
Well, the problem is that it obviously comes at a bad time, being that the Mets have turned it around the last few weeks, which is a nice run. You know, on Saturday, they were, 10 games over 500, which was the highest of the season.
Yeah, and they're 11 games over 500 today.
No, right.
And that, so yeah, the last 2 days they set a record, and then they broke the record today. So yeah, 11 games over 500, which is great. You know,
But then you're losing one of your
time to be
major
hot.
guys.
And they have the best record since I don't know, the best record. I forget how many games it was now. I think it was like 27-9 or something. It's like maybe 17-9, but whatever it is, it's a great record, and nobody has a better record in the last like month. So they're putting it all together at the right time. Now, you felt good at the idea that you're going to slide DeGrom back into the rotation, and, you know, he'll at least be, you know, a reasonable facsimile of himself, and that'll be great. We're still hoping for Steven Matz, Long Island boy.
Yeah.
Allegedly could start this week. We'll have to see if that actually happens. But, I mean, getting even one of the two back, and now there's, you know, best case scenario is only getting Steven Matz back. So I think... Look, these rookie pitchers, these, you know, sudden surprise call-ups like Gabriel and Noah today, they've pitched well, even when they've lost. Everybody except Montero, who pitched like garbage. But everyone else has pitched so well and, you know, really exceeded all expectations. You hope that we haven't hit the ceiling with them and that they have more good starts in them. But you'll just feel a lot better about all of it if you can get a couple starts out of Steven Matz down the stretch. But... I don't know. I mean, if you were one of the Mets starters, like, you know, Gesellman or, you know, any of these guys, would you just feel like the fact that you're winning is like, you know what, I can go out there, I can do it? Is that, you feel like that's a good confidence boost, right?
Yeah, I mean, what do you mean as far as DeGrom
like if you're on
leaving?
no. So without DeGrom being there, you're like, okay, we're playing really well. Would have been nice to have him, but we can do it without him.
I think so.
Yeah.
I absolutely think so, and that's why I don't think it's that bad. Obviously, it's a bad time, like we said. They've been winning. They've been on a really good streak, but it's not like where mid-season we're losing 10 players at a time. 1 to 3 literally every day.
Yeah.
And so DeGrom being a major part of it, of course, but I think that because he's one guy and we've had a really good, like, you know, go of it, of everybody else coming back and being healthy and a little bit of a groove, that I think it will be okay still.
Yeah.
I think there's a very good chance that it won't have a huge impact.
Yeah, and look, a couple guys who didn't really make an impact in today's game, but they were both in the game. Lucas Duda, who I had heard we were not going to see anymore this year.
For him to come back.
Very excited that he was back because he hadn't been in a game since May 20th, and there's no more minor league season, so he wasn't able to get a rehab start. So he was in the game, and, you know, it was fine. He played first base for a little bit, didn't hurt himself, grounding a ball or two, which even when he was healthy, he might have hurt himself on a couple of those balls. And it was smart to pinch hit in a big spot with the bases loaded. It didn't work out, but it was good to see him, and it was good to have Lagares in for defense in the 9th. It was just good to see these guys coming back. So you feel like there's, you know, just sort of good vibes all around.
Yeah.
Got to see Nimmo today.
I'm so glad you brought him up because do you remember a time where we were like, it has to be Conforto or Nimmo? Like, it can't be both.
And there was both.
And I've said since that time that why not? They're both doing well, like, you know.
It doesn't. And look, I know how much money he makes, but Jay Bruce has really not contributed since the trade. And yeah, switching out for him today made perfect sense.
Yeah.
And I think that that's something that Terry needs to be a little bit more willing to do. Is you don't leave Jay Bruce in. If his spot comes up in a crucial spot, depending on how many outs there are, you know what, you're gonna go ahead and put in somebody, whoever your best chance is. If Kelly Johnson's on the bench, you use him.
Yes.
And then you shuffle around.
You always use
your
him.
guy. You always use Andrea's guy. So I felt, I feel like it's great because you're getting to see Conforto. Conforto had 2 RBI today, which is great. Nimmo had a smile that lit up the whole stadium today. That's all that really mattered.
Well, he's young. He just wants it. He's thirsty. So no matter what, he's going to give it his all.
And by the way, speaking of minor leagues, I'm wearing my Las Vegas 51 shirt today for those watching on YouTube. And that's because so many Mets that are currently on the roster at some point this season were in the 51s roster. And they've been in a 51s uniform. So I felt like today was the day to represent because, we had Yanoa pitching and, he really hadn't started at the major league level. So he was like a true and true. He was a Las Vegas 51. And it's a fun ballpark. I've had a good time there. But even, even Reyes was in the 51s uniform, as he was sort of making his initial surge to the big club. So,
well, especially this season.
It's funny to think about if we looked at the roster today, including people who came in double switches and pinch runners, how many didn't have the 51s uniform at some point today? And you know what, Addison Reed and Familia weren't in the game today, so those are the 2 guys that immediately come to mind. Everybody else pretty much is a 51s, and it's funny, all this talent on the 51s, you'd think that they would have made the AAA playoffs, but they didn't. Anyway,
well, you're right, especially this season. How many people alone have been brought up?
Yeah,
right from the 51s.
I mean, if you just look around the diamond when the game ended, there were just so many. Yanoa, the pitcher, which was a joke that Melissa and I did like a few times in one of the shows you weren't here. Yanoa? I don't know anything about him. But anyway, so we're gonna get to the week in review now.
Okay.
And before we get to that, Richard Hurley, biggest fan of ABTV Mets on Twitter and the show. But we understand that he's watching the Emmys and then he'll watch us after. That's all right. I'm going to go home and I'll watch with my wife, but I needed to talk Mets first. But thank you, Richard.
Yes, always.
All right, so the week did not start well. Monday at 8 to 1.
Even though I thought it did.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, Andrea was up in Encino for the Tomorrow Show with me, so she didn't realize there was a game that night. I just stopped checking the score because
I was occupied.
It was a game at the Nationals. The Mets lost 8-1. It was just an old-fashioned beatdown.
That's why I didn't know. Because I was like, no, they're losing. I don't care.
There were no good vibes on Twitter. Montero pitched like garbage, and we won't see him start again. I don't know if he'll probably come in and mop up one way or the other before the end of the season. Whether if the Mets have like a big lead or they're down 8 runs again, but I can't imagine we're going to see him again. They'll figure it out. So not much to say about that. Tuesday had the chance to definitely be kind of one of those heartbreak games because they had a lead. It was 3-1, and Familia came in and he blew a save, and he went a whole year without blowing saves. But it seems like he's about once a week, every 2 weeks, he blows a save now. So,
really rough.
But that felt terrible. But TJ Rivera saves the day because off of a great closer, Melanson, the Nats closer, who had been with the Pirates for last couple of years, he's great. And TJ Rivera's like, no, I got this. So he got the home run, and it all worked out. And
that was his first, right?
Yeah, he hit a second today. So so that was great. And it was just one of those things where you feel like, you know what? They can come back from adversity. Earlier in the season, you definitely didn't feel that way. Once they were down, they were down. That was
for sure.
And that was just, to win an extra innings like that, and they do it again, which we'll talk about a little later in the week. I know it was just a great feeling. And I think that the fact, look, the Nats aren't playing out the string. They do want to try and get home field advantage. They want to have the best record in the National League so that they can face the wild card. They're probably not going to catch the Cubs because I think they're, after losing today, I think they're like 8 behind the Cubs. So it'll be hard. But they still want to win these games. So getting one game out of them was great. And it's hard to really be too critical on the Wednesday game. They lost 1-0. Salas came in, he gave up 1 run. Gesellman had pitched incredibly, and the Mets just couldn't get any offense going. So, you don't really blame the pitching on that. And again, it was a 1-0 loss.
Right.
Literally the definition of a tough luck loss. Because you're just like, all right. And it was weird because you didn't feel like the intensity of like, oh my God, they needed that game because you're not chasing the Nationals. There was this, well, Melissa's, God love her, hugely optimistic before this week.
That's exactly where my mind just went.
She was like, well, they're not that far back. They are that far back, and they're not playing them again. So, it was a nice dream, but we're going to talk a lot about the wild card.
One is huge. Grabbing one is huge.
Getting that one game is good.
And being so close.
And you didn't play badly in the third game.
Because again, that comes to how you feel as a player in a team that you're not getting shut out. If it was another 8-1 game, that's a totally different series.
Yeah.
So
and think about how worn out the bullpen is, and just how tired guys are to stand out there in the field. So yes, they did lose 2 games in that series, and they lost the wide majority of games against the Nationals this year. But you felt okay after that. There was the off day on Thursday. Always good to get the off day. We only have one more the rest of the regular season, and it's not this week ahead. So it's good. Catch your breath. The players catch their breath. They had an off day at home, so it's not an off day on the road, where in theory you could get into more trouble. But so Friday was just a solid. If you drew out blueprints for how to win a game, put Bartolo Colon on the mound, give him 3 runs, Familia in the 9th for his 49th save. Reyes and Cabrera had home runs back to back. Not the first time we've seen that in the last few weeks. Another RBI by Cespedes. It was literally all you needed. 3-0, and that was great. It was just like, okay, you're starting the series off against the Twins, the worst team in baseball, who's probably going to lose 100 games. So, it just would have been a bad feeling for probably the guys in the clubhouse if you're playing a bad team, which the Mets have played bad teams and lost that first game. And you're just like, I don't even know how you did that. But so you don't have anything to overcome. But then you feel like just across the board, last night, Saturday night's win, had to be an incredible feeling because it took 12 innings. They won 3-2. But Irvin Santana, former Angels pitcher, was pitching for the Twins. He wasn't unhittable, but he was barely hittable. He'd get into minor jams, get out of it without any trouble. And, Lugo, to his credit, Seth Lugo got out of a bunch of jams that he created, and, the game was close. And the fact that he was able to, he made the jams, he made the problems, but he's able to get himself out of the problems. That was huge credit to him. So, the game ends up being tied 1-1, headed into the 11th, It's already a long night. And Byron Buxton for the Twins, you're like, who? Byron Buxton? I don't know. That just seems like, some member from the House of Lords that, you're reading about Parliament. Lord Buxton. Something like that. He hits a home run off, of course, Hansel Robles. And I definitely uttered an expletive. I was in the car listening on the radio, and I heard that. And, I don't know who Byron Buxton is. I can't believe he's going to beat us in this game. So you get to the bottom of the 11th. Grandy Man hits a home run right away. And it actually kind of seemed like it was not necessarily out right away, but you rewind the tape, you're like, oh yeah, that was out. But again, I was listening, and you're like, well, great. So, you're down a little bit, and then boom. Now, they definitely had an opportunity to win it there in the bottom of the 11th, but that didn't really slow them down because Granderson hits another home run actually with 2 outs in the 12th. And, it looked like it could have been a long night. Granderson's like, don't worry about it. I got this. And that's why today's show is sponsored by the Grandy Man, because he mixes it with love and makes the world taste good.
I love it.
So, look, it was a great game. It was, there were those 2 home runs from Granderson that, really, it just shows that this team, when they're down, they're not out. And like I said before, you really felt when they weren't even necessarily down, but you know, when things started to not go their way, you felt like everybody just kind of put their hands up and were like, "Can we forfeit the game right now?"
Yes.
You know? And it was great to see.
So many times.
We've talked about it on the show
Over and over.
So
and
it was great to see.
We've talked about Granderson too, being the guy that's always just. He's just so stable. He's so consistent, and you know that no matter what, he's never gonna be the one that's down and out.
Yeah.
He's gonna put up his best everything.
Look, if you look at his numbers for the year, you would think that this is a guy who's old and doesn't have it in him anymore. He's probably not trying. No, he has terrible numbers, but he tries so hard, and especially he had, you know, atrocious numbers with runners in scoring position until last week. And just for him to have 2 home runs in a game is like, you know, the fact that somebody different every night can kind of boost you up. You know, it wasn't a week for Reyes. And yes, for people on YouTube, I'm holding up the Cab Reyes right now. We will drink it soon. Don't worry. It's been a good luck charm, as has the cape, by the way.
Yes,
we got Andrea's cape right here. I know their phone's on it. But ever since you won this cape at the boardwalk or whatever, it's been a good luck charm. So we're gonna go ahead and keep it there.
Yes.
And the Cab Reyes is gonna remain closed. You know, this is the point where we start to get a little superstitious.
A little bit.
Just a little bit.
But it makes sense. That's what we do.
So let's talk about today's
fans.
game pretty quickly. You know, this was another one of those times where there were so many opportunities for the Mets to score an obscene amount of runs, especially bottom of the first, bases loaded, nobody out. And Travis d'Arnaud, what a terrible, just bad luck. I kind of like the guy just because I was very fond of him last year. Just bad luck to hit into that double play, and you're just like, well, that's over. So you feel bad when stuff like that happens. But then they had the bases loaded again in the 6th, and they didn't get anything out of it. So this guy Gibson, who's pitching for the Twins, he's not pitching well. Is actually pitching pretty well, but he only is in for 4 2/3 innings, so he didn't qualify for the win. And the way that the Twins kind of went on the attack on the bullpen, you're like, well, you know, maybe he could have at least gotten one more batter. And that was one of those things that I've learned. I just take a deep breath, hold it in. Let's see how the game ends before I let my head explode. Yeah, exactly. Because I was just like, if this is how they lose the game, because he didn't let the guy who should qualify, you know, he had 70-some-odd pitches, and yes, he wasn't going to be a starter. It was a little bit of a surprise he was going to start. But, you pitched well. So you didn't get the win, though, unfortunately. Eric Adele got the win, and, you know, it was a good spot that he came in, but I don't know if he deserved a win. But TJ Rivera.
That's so weird how that works.
Yeah, the win rules are very archaic, and every once in a while you can appeal and it gets changed as to who actually gets credited with the win. It's just like sometimes they'll change the scoring and whether or not something was a base hit or an error. I don't know. They should just know when it happens. Yeah. It'd be easier to just get it right the first time, wouldn't it? Easy for me to say. So another home run for TJ Rivera, which is great. 2 RBI from Conforto, and that's the extent of the Mets pitching or the Mets offense today. But it turned out to be enough, just barely enough, but it was enough, and it was great because you could tell that Terry didn't want to use Addison Reed or Yuris Familia in this game. Just a lot of all the regulars were really off. Got a couple in as pinch hitters, but he really wanted everybody to kind of take a break because they don't have another off day for like 10 days. So let's give those guys a break, see if we can win with the B squad, and they managed to. So I guess this is not the player of the week, but the player of today's game was Jerry Blevins because he came in for a 4-out save, and he hadn't had a save in the major leagues in I think like 5 years. This week he had 2. So it's great that you have a guy like that who is capable in the bullpen. And you know what Jerry did this week? Dyed his hair blonde just like Reyes and Cabrera, and all of a sudden he's got 2 saves. So if the rest of the guys on the team, would actually take the time, and they talked about during the broadcast, I think last night, that if they had swept the Cardinals about a month ago, everybody on the team was going to bleach their hair.
Really?
And I think that there were probably a couple guys who, coughed up the game so they didn't have to do it. No, I'm kidding.
Cabrera, I just can't even look at him.
No,
he had an
put your hat back on.
amazing catch today,
Yeah.
the grab, and I was like, just keep turned around. Like, don't look at me. Don't look at the TV.
Just don't look at me.
Just stay that way.
So look, it was a huge win, and they're 11 games over 500, like we said before, and they needed to sweep the Twins this week, and there are a lot of those, as Keith Hernandez calls, second division teams that they've been paired up against, where you're like, well, they need to sweep them, and sometimes they only win one game, but this was the time where they needed to do it, and they actually did. And the reason why that's important, sorry, were you going to say something?
No, keep going.
The reason why that was important is because up in San Francisco, the two other teams in the wild card mix, the Giants and the Cardinals, were actually playing each other. So the way it ended today, the Mets actually have a 1-game lead as the first wild card. They're 1-game lead over San Francisco, 2 games up on the Cardinals. Now, there's something to have been said for if the Giants had beat up on the Cardinals, that probably would have pushed them far enough down out of contention. They would have been 5 games back today. But that's not what happened. It was sort of one of those situations where whatever happened, as long as the Mets won, it was going to be good for them. So they actually jumped over San Francisco for now, which is great. And the thing about this now is that the Giants have to play the Dodgers the next 3
I'm going
games.
tomorrow.
You're going to be
I
there.
was like, I'm ready to jump in because
See?
I think the Dodgers are going to win, but I hope for our sake
for the
here.
for the Mets' sake, at this point, we want to see the Dodgers, because they're going to play the Dodgers 6 more times before the end of the season, and you feel like they should be able to. I don't know, the Dodgers, their bullpen has been just as bad as the Giants, as I saw in Arizona. I actually don't know what the final was in the game, but they came back and then immediately gave the lead back. So it'll be interesting to see how they match up. But that's good for the Mets if the Giants get beat up by the Dodgers.
Yeah, in this series.
Yeah, and then the Giants are going to play the Padres, so you feel like they're going to at least win 2 out of 3 over the weekend. So the Mets really have to keep the pedal to the metal. The Cardinals are going to play the Rockies the next few days, which it's at Coors Field. So as kind of bad as the Rockies have been, they can score a ton of runs there, and the Cardinal pitching is not really a lock. So that could go either way. And then the Cardinals are going to play the Cubs, who also want to, as we alluded to, want to maintain that lead for best record in the National League. So the way that the wild card standings look right now is very encouraging, but still a lot of work to be done.
Absolutely.
There's
But that's why if the
another 2
Giants
weeks.
get pushed back even more now, just with the series with the Dodgers, I feel like that gives the Mets even more leg up,
Yeah.
And yes, there's a lot of baseball still left. Maybe not a lot, but there's some. So I just think that whatever can happen now just gives us more motivation, more inspiration, and just keep going.
Yeah, I think there's 13 more games, and you have to win the majority of them. Just now, you can hope that the Giants will lose, you can hope that the Cardinals will lose, but what's the one thing you can actually control, which is win? So they're not going to run the table, they're not going to win all those games, but there are going to be a lot of winnable games in the next 2 weeks, because as we look ahead to this week, they're at home against the Braves and then Philly. So 3 games against the Braves and 4 against Philly. And tomorrow is Aaron Blair for the Braves with his 7.5 ERA against Syndergaard. Julio Teheran, who has been amazing for the Braves in a lost season for the Braves. Julio Teheran has definitely been a bright spot. So all you can do is hope that Gesellman keeps the Mets close and they can get to the bullpen. And then Cologne's going to go on Wednesday. There'll be those 4 against Philly. And then after that, it'll really be the home stretch. We'll talk after those 4 games against Philly, but then they have 3 in Miami and 3 against Philly. And the Marlins, they showed a little fire today, but they've really fallen off the pace. Just a couple weeks ago, we were talking about there were all these teams in the mix for the wild card. The Pirates, who really did a nosedive, mostly because they got beat up by the Cubs and the Cardinals, and they're going to play them again. And Miami just could not get out of their own way. And also, really, Miami's slide started in that 4-game series against the Mets. So, again, the Mets doing what they needed to. So, look, it's a favorable schedule, but, St. Louis's schedule is not that tough. The Giants have 6 games against the Dodgers, but their other games are all, very winnable. So you hope for help, like I said, but you have to win as many as you can. So I feel oddly optimistic that the Mets are going to play well in the next 2 weeks.
Yes.
And I usually
too.
don't say things like that because, very suspicious, or not suspicious, but superstitious. Although I am also a little suspicious. I'm a little suspicious when the Mets play well. I'm like, what happened?
What? Totally.
Yeah, are they trying to lose and that's why they're winning? I don't know. No, I kid. But so I don't know. I hope that we have some fun things to talk about next week. But before we go, I did already give away my player of the week. It had to be Grandy. And it might have been him before last night. It probably would have been somebody else. In fact, I actually know who it would have been. It would have been Rene Rivera because in the game against the Nationals, he initiated 2 strike him out, throw him out, double plays. And I don't remember there being 1 in a game lately, and I really don't remember there being 2 for the Mets. I actually don't know. I meant to look up, see if Melissa was here. She'd be like,
she'd have the
well,
stats.
in 1987,
totally.
she'll have something.
Yeah.
So maybe we'll ask her next week when she's
That's a
back.
good call. I definitely recognize him this week.
Yeah, he was great. And, it's sort of a weird thing for my player of the week to be, somebody's defensive prowess, although he's been much better behind the plate than d'Arnaud has. And that's why d'Arnaud's playing time has fallen off. But it had to be Granderson because he really propped them up last night. And he won that game. The rest of the team sure kept them in it. But do you agree on Grandy or did you have somebody else in mind?
I do, but this is why when you thought I was going to say something before, I didn't want to interrupt your train of thought. But I was really excited that you brought up Blevins because he was my, if anything, runner-up for MVP this week.
It's
or
important,
player of the
like
week.
I said, for him to be able to come out of the bullpen.
I recognize him fully, and from Tuesday and
especially
today's
today,
games,
like a 4-out save is actually really hard to do because you get that intensity. You sit down, and we've seen Familia do 4 and 5 out saves, and sometimes it doesn't go well. The best closers in history, or at least the modern closers, not your 3-inning closers like you used to always get, but your traditional 1-inning, your Mariano Rivera's, your Trevor Hoffman, the multiple inning saves can really throw them off. So it was great. A guy who's not a closer got a 4-out save.
I mean, he saved Familia.
Yeah, right, exactly.
on Tuesday, so
it
was a big deal.
He closed it out for the closer.
He did, and I thought that was awesome.
Yeah.
He's a kid. He comes in, he steps up, and it was solid.
Yeah. So look, good week. It was a 4-2 week, which only a few weeks ago, that was the best week we'd ever had on Mets Wrap 360. So we got a little spoiled last week, but you know what? I was very happy with this 4-2 week.
When they said season high on Saturday,
the 11 games over.
I was like, "Are you now?" That's so funny.
Well, I mean, they fell a game under, and at that point, I was just like, I can't believe I got to do this Mets show for the next 6 weeks. And look, who knows? After a week from tonight, who knows how I'll feel? But you feel good. There's 7 games, like we said, 3 against the Braves, 4 against the Phillies. You should win both of those series. You should easily take 2 out of 3 against the Braves. Tehran's going to be tough. And then, you shouldn't split with Philly. You should actually win 3 out of 4 against Philly. So I'm saying 5 out of 7. That's what they need to do. We'll see what happens. There's a lot of scoreboard watching. And as Keith Hernandez said, that it helps when the teams that you're chasing are on the West Coast because you get your win out of the way and then you just sit back and watch.
Right.
And if you lose, then you're like, oh my God, I hope this one wins and that one loses. And there's a lot more involved. So if you win, you get to relax and just see what everybody else does, which that's what the Dodgers did last night. They won early and they saw, so they're closing in on division title. Does not look like there will be a wild card game at Dodger Stadium, which I was a little hopeful for because that meant I could go.
Yeah.
If it's in San Francisco, I'm probably not going to drive up there on a Wednesday.
It's gonna be bad tomorrow because I'm going with a San Francisco fan.
Oh.
So and I'm gonna be rooting.
Are you in the
against
cheap
them,
seats?
So. No, it was a birthday gift, so
okay.
I bought some nice seats for him.
All right.
Yeah.
So that'll be good. Yeah. So that'll be fun. Yeah. It'll be good, and we can get your report.
Yes.
On next Sunday's show.
Keep tuned into Twitter.
And speaking of next Sunday's show, we'll be back here at the same Mets time, same Mets channel. Make sure you follow us on Twitter at ABTVMets, and as we mentioned, please rate, comment on iTunes. That helps the show, and watch us on YouTube. For Andrea Fasano at Andy Fasano, I'm Christian Bladt at Christian DMZ. We will see you next week on Mets Wrap 360.
Thanks, guys.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.